Hello, everybody. Dennis Prager here talking to you about the choice of JD Vance as the running mate. So I am speculating on the question of, does a candidate ever really bring in new votes? One of the most famous choices ever made in the modern era, at any rate, was John F. Kennedy picking Lyndon Johnson of Texas, because it was such a tight race between Richard Nixon and John F. Kennedy, and he really wanted to broaden his base, and that was by, he thought, choosing Lyndon Johnson. Whether it worked or not, I don't know, but he was elected, although Illinois did cheat. What is one going to say? So it's I can practically read the mind of Donald Trump here. What I want most is someone who is carrying on my philosophy, dubbed MAGA, Make America Great Again, philosophy of governance and of American values. And I think his youth was a factor, because both he and Joe Biden are in the older stages of life, and that appealed to him. I don't think he thought, how am I going to get Ohio votes? He has, I assume, Ohio votes already. I think he felt a bit burned with Mike Pence, the way things turned out at the end, although Mike Pence was an extremely loyal vice president. I mean, you can't get more loyal than Mike Pence, and I don't want to rewrite history in light of January 6th. The media, of course, cite him in his anti-Trump comments. In the 2016 race, he was very opposed. Was it? Yeah, it was 2016. Where was he in 2020 with vis-a-vis?
He was with Trump.
He was already with Trump. Yeah. People change their minds, folks. I mean, it's the way it works. And he was relatively young at the time. Now, interestingly, he has an Indian as from India. I believe her family's from India. A wife. I mean, in the race-preoccupied America in which we live, that could only be a good thing, and that will benefit the ticket to the extent that it nullifies it's just two white men, an idiocy that will be engaged in, but I think is losing some of its luster. People who think that way, I do believe, are less respectable by more Americans than in, let's say, 2 years ago or 4 years ago. And so the choice is someone who carries on his values and he trusts. It obviously means, given his youth, that unless obviously unforeseen blunders take place, or just, if not blunders, just policies or statements that hurt him, he would be the person to have to defeat in order to get the 2028 election nomination, the 2028 nomination. And there's JD Vance. I'll review some of his positions later. The Wall Street Journal is not happy because he does believe in tariffs, and I would have to acquaint myself with what that means, that he believes in tariffs. Does he believe in tariffs on every imported good, on some imported goods, on some imported goods, or all imported goods from certain countries?
Talking China, essentially.
Well, he's talking China essentially. Well, doesn't China have tariffs on our goods?
Yeah.
Interesting question. He is not supportive of the war in Ukraine. Then I would have to become more acquainted with that. What does that mean exactly? Was he in the beginning and over time? I'll tell you. So I was gung-ho in the beginning. You support Ukraine. This is what America does. That is why it's a bright, shining light. It helps countries stay autonomous and free. But there should have been an attempt at peace, if for no other reason than what is gained by Ukraine to lose a generation of young men. The havoc that is taking place within Ukraine is not something people comment on often. I don't know how you defeat Russia. Who's defeated Russia? Napoleon didn't defeat Russia. Hitler didn't defeat Russia. It's hard to imagine Ukraine will defeat Russia. Also, there is no reason to risk something horribly greater than the war with Russia. If you don't have to. If you have to, you have to. Boris Johnson, then Prime Minister of Britain, was sent to Ukraine and by Joe Biden in order to squash any movement toward peace with Russia at the time. I think that will be regarded as a terrible blunder over time. So it's a very difficult issue, and it's hard for me to imagine that JD Vance and Donald Trump would just stop aiding Ukraine, outright, cut off all aid. But if they do pressure both parties into some peace negotiation, that would be a blessing for the Ukrainian people, and ultimately for the world, because of the risks that exist there. On Israel, he has said he wants Israel to do what it has to do and get it over with. Is that correct? Which is the right position. Douglas Murray was one of the great defenders of Israel in the world, perhaps the greatest. And Douglas Murray put it very well from the beginning. Israel is the only country in the world that is not allowed to win a war. Yeah. It's the only, listen, you could make a whole list. Israel is the only country in the world. Israel is the only country in the world targeted for extinction. And people still are uniquely anti-Israel. A country whose neighbors want to annihilate all of the country. Country that has produced such good things for the human race, like so many medicines, all the medicines it has produced. Take any Palestinian medicines lately? The great Palestinian export all of my lifetime has been terror. That's the single greatest Palestinian export. The moral record of the Palestinians is the worst of post-World War II nations, I would say. Well, not China. China was worse. But that was largely internal. Well, they made North Korea possible. So how about since Mao died? The Palestinians' record is the worst. And there's been competition, gotta say. For the full episode of the Dennis Prager Show, go to pragertopia.com, sign up, and become a full member.